Julian, do you want to set us to record? Thank you. Welcome everybody, and we'll get started. My name's Chris Ball, and I'm going to be one of your co-hosts today for what is a very exciting session, something we've been looking forward to for quite a long time now, which is the launch of the 2021 Bristol and Bath LegalTech report. And so we're going to take you through some of the highlights. You'll be able to download the report tomorrow morning, which is the official launch date. So this is a bit of a sneak peek. We're going to go through some of the headlines, talk a little bit about how the report got pulled together, and we're going to hear from quite a few of the people who are featured in the report and get some of their views, including on very important subject for today, which is what next? Where do we go from this report? How can we take some of its findings and turn them into even greater success and more tangible outcomes? So that's going to be a bit of a focus of what we talk about, but particularly we're going to focus on what are the headlines of the report. So you've got some idea what you'll see when you get your hands virtually on an electronic copy tomorrow morning. This is the culmination of 6 months of work on and off, mostly on in the last few weeks, it has to be said. Some long hours been done by quite a few people, particularly the Whitecap team who put this report together. And we're going to hear from Stuart Harrison in a minute to talk us through the Whitecap process and what they found. But also massive thanks to Julian Wells, who led the Whitecap team and capped off the final few weeks of effort on this by his wife producing a baby boy over the weekend. So it's been super busy for Julian as this project came to fruition, and also Daniel Ryan, who's done so much of the work on this project. We're going to hear from Stuart as well, thanks to him. And all of our contributors, lots of you on the call have been involved through the surveys, through interviews. There are some fantastic quotes in the report, which you'll see when you get to look at it, and some really interesting contributions. So big thanks to everybody who contributed. And there are some great ideas, particularly about what the region should be doing next in terms of building up its legal tech capability. And so the report, whilst it does focus a lot on where are we now, also includes recommendations and some ideas about what should happen to take legal tech in Bristol and Bath to the next level. And thanks for all your contributions on that. As you'll find, I think we surprised ourselves a little bit, I think, with some of the findings of the research, and started some threads running many months ago, which, as we dug and spoke to more people, revealed some really interesting hidden gems, I think, in terms of what we've got here in the region. I won't thank all of the sponsors and supporters of the report one by one. You'll see their logos and their names up a lot. You'll hear from some of them during the course of the session as well. But I certainly want to thank West of England Combined Authority for kicking this off in the first place. They were very much the people who seeded the funding for the report and really got us to the point where we could commission this back in 2020. So many thanks to them, and we'll hear from them as well during this session. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is hand over to my co-host, Stuart Harrison, from the Whitecap team, and Stuart's going to take you through what we did on the report and talk about some of the key elements of it and the headline findings. And then we're going to go into a bit of a panel session with a few people contributing, where we dig a little bit deeper into those key findings. Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Chris, and hi everyone. As Chris mentioned, I'm Associate Director for Whitecap in the Southwest region, although I'm sure many of you will know me as founder and co-director for FinTech West as well. I also want to add some thanks, but particularly to the sponsors, and it really is as simple as if we didn't have your backing, the report wouldn't have happened. So thanks very much for providing us with the feedback and input into the research along its what seems like a jolly long journey. But I have to say big thanks to Chris as well, and Julian, Daniel, for working alongside them. It's been a pleasure. And I don't want to sound too Oscar level lovey, but I think as a region, we should certainly be pleased that we've got someone as knowledgeable and well connected as Chris involved. And I think that's a key factor to build on and build BBLT as an organisation acting as a focal point for the sort of actions and follow on from the report. But let's actually just recap a bit on the report and how we got here. Prior to producing the report physically, as Chris mentioned, there's been months and months of work, particularly in two key areas around desk research and one-to-one interviews. The desk research, I mean, that it sounds simple, but it is so much work to research hundreds of websites and documents, supporting material, in order that we can understand what makes up the region's ecosystem, how it all is all connected, and obviously the key data. And then the one-to-one interviews, which many of you have gone through. Chris and I have interviewed around 50 people across different types of organizations. Obviously, it's not just law firms, not just legal tech firms, there's tech companies, higher education, and so on. So besides all this, there's countless conversations that have taken place outside of the more formal interviews. Plus, obviously, we've held various events. We've had the online survey. And yeah, I'm not going to keep reiterating the point. There's a lot of work, but it's obviously why it takes a few months to put it all together. Looking at the objectives that we wanted to achieve at the start, and I think with the report, we've achieved that. Some aspects we weren't sure how well we'd be able to achieve them at the start, and I don't mind admitting that when I first began discussing the possibilities of undertaking the report with Dagmar and Chris, we weren't actually sure how strong the region was in regard to legal tech, but I think it's safe to say that we've been surprised and delighted to find so much strength and capability here. Certainly a great foundation to build upon. And the report itself, if you've seen anything from the FinTech report or the Leeds report that we talked about a few months ago, then you realise it's not something to be read once and just filed away. And again, like the FinTech report, which we released over a year ago, this legal tech report will have longevity, and I expect we will still be referring to it and sending it out in 12 months, just as we've done with the other research pieces we've done. So hopefully it will really act as a great platform to help promote the region, spark discussion around tackling the challenges and developing the ecosystem over time. This is the first inside page you're getting to see, which isn't that exciting because it's the contents, but it shows you the depth of the report that we've got. I mean, it's not a massive number of pages, and as I said earlier, it's very readable, but we do try and cover all the areas that impact legal tech in the region and present it in a very easy to read style. There's many supporting stakeholder quotes, and there's a good few case studies to read through as well. But let me move on to some of the stats that we've found and facts about legal tech in the region, which we've highlighted here. This shows that the region, compared to other regions, punches well above its weight. We have a strength in the law sector and a strength in the technology sector, which creates the perfect, if you like, melting pot from which to build a great focus around innovation in legal technology, both within the legal techs, law firms, and of course related businesses. So we found 15 specific legal tech businesses. Actually, they're quite varied across their sort of business activity and size. But when you add in tech firms that are working in the sector and the legal technology elements of law firms, we're actually above 30 organizations who have a legal tech story, if you like. And clearly, it's a new ecosystem because the average age of the legal tech is only 2 years old, which I would argue, and certainly in my view, makes the numbers even more impressive and shows the potential that exists within this region for legal tech. We've calculated that there are 151 employees in the legal techs, but 769 in the whole legal technology workforce once you actually add in the considerable amount of innovation taking place in law firms. Although looking at this now, it must be a recent update, because I'm sure it used to say 768, so welcome aboard, whoever you are. We've also got a lot of head office functions based in the region, and I think that's important because it shows we're not just full of, if you like, service or spillover offices. We've got a high proportion, the top 100 firms have a presence here. They're very influential factors on the ecosystem itself. So basically, once we put together all the firms involved in the ecosystem, we probably arrive, or we do arrive, at the page of the report, which along with the front cover will be shown more than any other, and that's the infographic. So everyone quickly looking at all the little logos, thinking, am I there, am I there? But the infographic does get a lot of coverage, but it makes an important point because the legal tech ecosystem isn't just the 15, if you like, independent legal tech software firms operating in the region. It's all the connected parties working on innovation and technology within law, whether they're tech firms working with law firms, or the innovation happening in law firms themselves, or of course education within universities and so on. It's all part of the same interconnected ecosystem that adds to the value of the region and the region's success. And it's very clear, I think, from what we know of other regions, that we're ahead of the game at this stage. So very much want to keep it that way. Some of the key findings and recommendations, which I'll just briefly cover here, because Chris will be taking over and covering these in a little bit more detail. The first finding really is outlining the strength of both the technology sector and the strength of the legal sector. The second finding is showing really how much this has come together with a particularly stunning and surprising number of people specifically employed in legal technology and innovation, actually far more than we'd imagined when we first started the research. And I think similarly with point 3, 15 legal techs having an average age of 2 years shows the rapid progression that's been made, and actually suggests there's a lot more to come. And I think, well, Daniel is listening, so I think compared to Leeds, I'm allowed to say that given the Leeds research, they had 3 times the population, a very strong legal sector, but only had 2 or 3 legal techs. So with us having 15, that's a great factor. Finding 4, I think really we're trying to clearly outline the fact that we really must collaborate in the law sector like we do in the tech sector if we want to drive this forward and build on the great story so far. I think there are concerns about competition which ultimately could hold us back if we're not careful, and clearly the benefits to be gained from collaboration, in my mind, will surely outweigh any disadvantages. And then finally, finding 5 ultimately shows our cosmopolitan and progressive attitude down here, coupled with perhaps that perfect community Goldilocks size, and it does generate an attitude towards solving key aspects such as access to justice and perhaps other factors holding back society. So they're really the 5 headlines, but Chris is going to cover those in a little bit more detail. So I'll hand over to Chris.
Thank you, Stuart. Stuart, you can just push us on to the next slide, and I'll just kind of briefly introduce our panel, as we're calling them. We're not going to treat them just as one big panel. We're going to bring them in at various times. Everyone here has been involved and been contributing to the report in some ways. Some of them hugely, and you'll see some quotes from most of these people involved. So I'll introduce them as they come along, but you can see their names now. So thank you, Antonia and Dave, and Adam and Ben and Emma, Martin, Richard, Zoe, Alan, and Dagmar for joining us today. That's really appreciated. It's great to see your support on this session, as well as all the input you've had into the report. That's who we're going to have some reflections from about the content of the report. What I'm going to do, including to bring the panelists in a little bit, is just dig a little bit deeper into those headlines that Stuart just flashed up and talked about. I think one thing before we do that's really important to say is it's always critical when you've done a detailed report like this and done lots of research to try and summarize some of the big messages and the big headlines. Of course it is. And you are going to see these headlines a lot. There's a hell of a lot more detail in the report. There's lots of stories, lots of great examples of things that are going on, which frankly, we only generally have space to make a passing reference to in many cases. And I think Stuart and I, who did quite a few of the interviews, probably feel that diva movie directors, we probably feel there's a lot left on the cutting room floor that we'd have loved to see in the final cut as well. So there's a huge amount of detail, which I think we will get opportunities through different ways of disseminating information over the next few months to dig a bit more deeply into. The report itself is a summary, and the headlines are a real summary of the summary. So do give the report some time and follow up also on some of the stories you see in there. And obviously you can do that through the web, etc. But just going to dig through and kind of put my Bristol and Bath LegalTech hat on. I've been co-chairing that group for the last few years with Dagmar, and just put that hat on and kind of respond really to the report and particularly to the headline findings and get some views from our panel as well. Stuart, if you just push us on to the next slide. Thanks. So you may struggle to see this. Don't worry too much. It's a slightly more detailed dip into the first 3 of the 5 issues, and there's one more slide to come. And so we thought it was worth just unpacking some of these points. And what's really important about this slide, yes, it lists the findings down the left-hand side in the coloured blocks, but it also summarizes some of the recommendations and actions that the report contains. As I said right at the start, the report isn't just a, hey, here's what we found. It's also reflecting what a lot of people said about what they'd like to see happen. It's also talking about not just strengths, but some of the gaps and areas that people feel clearly could be improved in order to really develop our legal tech industry and community. So we'll touch on some of those. So let me take those one at a time, and I'll bring in some of our speakers to sort of reflect on these as well. The first one, as Stuart mentioned at the start, that we got back from the Whitecap team fairly early on, was that when they were comparing what's going on in the West with other regions and what they expected to find when they started the research, the view was that there were higher levels of activity and legal tech activity and innovation in the region than they expected to find. Stuart's given you some of the stats about numbers of legal tech companies, but I think we found through the interview process in particular, really so much happening within the law firms as well. It was very clear. The larger law firms in the region, yes, perhaps we expected that, but the development of legal tech units, innovation units, client-facing product teams in quite a lot of the law firms in the region was very clear when we spoke to them. And what was also interesting, and it's mentioned in the report a few times, was it wasn't just restricted to the biggest firms. We kind of expected to see it there. The region's got a good reputation. Many of its firms have got great reputations for being progressive, dynamic, trying to be innovative. But we also saw it in some of the much smaller firms, some of the startup firms, and some who've been around for a while. The other thing that's worth mentioning, perhaps inevitably, we did a lot of the surveying and all of the interviews post-COVID, as in post the first lockdown and the impact of COVID. And so we were able to see and speak to firms about just how they'd reacted. And we reflected a little bit on that story in the report, and I think reflect on the success, by and large, that the industry has had in adapting and very quickly and pivoting, and also on the acceleration impact of COVID as we could see it coming through the research on digitization and the kind of innovation agendas in law firms and in other parts of the sector. So we expect to see that come through over the next year particularly, and there's a recommendation in there that came out of some of the contributions we had from people that we should really work together to cement the digital gains that we've seen over the last year, and really work together on a new standard for hybrid agile working. The other thing I'll just mention is this point about head office functions that Stuart mentioned earlier on. It's not a piece of research you can take off the shelf. We have to sort of dig quite deep. But what we found, which we think is it's a real root cause of just how much activity there is, and a root cause of the next point I'm going to go on to in a second as well, is that there were head office functions, not necessarily the whole of the central support, but quite significant parts of it, of 17 of the UK's top 200 firms based in the Bristol and Bath area. And that's a high percentage for any regional city, and it really knocks on into some of the skills, experience we've got in the region. And what's very important, we make the point in the report, it's very easily missed, is it means we've got teams who have got national and international experience. Those teams are sat in Bristol or Bath, particularly in Bristol, I think, for these kind of head office functions, and they are day in, day out dealing with lawyers and clients and issues across the world in many cases, and certainly across the UK, and that gives us a real base advantage, I think, in the region that hasn't generally been recognised, I think, in the past. I'm gonna just pause there, and I wouldn't mind hearing from a few of the people who've contributed to the report on our panel, and particularly those from law firms who've been part of the research. Antonia James from VWV. Antonia, Director of Client Relations. It would be interesting to hear your reflections on this particular point.
Thanks, Chris. And first of all, thank you to everybody that's put such a huge amount of effort into this report. It made fascinating reading. And I think my takeaway you've just highlighted is really just the huge amount of activity that's already going on, and perhaps surprisingly across the different size of law firms. So my passion is the client experience. So for me, pre-pandemic, we were focusing on the huge change in the way that our clients are behaving, but also the demands that they require or they demand of us, coupled with a huge change in technological advances and market forces. Now we've got the sort of the pandemic and the growth of all these new startups as well. So I think we're entering a new era to enable greater client choice, a better user experience, as well as engaging with legal tech to improve efficiencies for our businesses. So I think, the reports really, for me, help to highlight the opportunity that our region in particular has. And certainly through my interview with Stuart, I'm passionate about the collaboration, and he has already facilitated a couple of conversations for us at VWV, where we've started new ventures as a result of just being part of this project. So yeah, exciting times, and we look forward to being part of that.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Antonio, and thanks for mentioning that point. I think it's really, really interesting that I think we found quite a few things spinning off the interview and the prep process, before the report is even published. That's really, really good
Definitely.
to hear. Dave Bloor, Dave's CIO, CTO for Anstey. Dave, reflections from you on all of this?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and just to echo comments already made, the effort that's gone into this is fantastic. I guess it's great to see the strength of the ecosystem we have, and it's great. And for Anstey, we put a lot of effort into trying to innovate, as Antonio said, for clients and delivering our legal services. What the report really brings to light, and particularly through the infographic, is that ecosystem that is there. And I think we've got to work really hard to support the ecosystem growth. One of the audience members, Neil Vernon, has touched on a great point around talent. How do we harness talent into this space? And I think we've got to protect this ecosystem. We've got to work across the ecosystem to help each other really keep growing it and evolve it, because we are all going to have a common agenda of digitizing our legal services, trying to find differentiators to deliver to our clients' needs in better differentiating ways. I think it's just key that we come together, and the report really brings out the strength that we just need to build on to bring that to life.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Dave. And it was really good in our discussions through this process as well to see some of the ideas you were already coming with. I know you're champing at the bit really to get some of these parts of the ecosystem better connected up, and we'll come to that in a little while to talk a little bit more about how we can do that better. Finally, on this section, Alan Pratt. Alan's a partner at DAC Beechcroft, so another big firm doing a lot of things in this area. And Alan, it'd be really interesting to get your take on this as a real live lawyer out there in the market.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think from our point of view, we've been under pressure and striving to keep up with clients and striving to push them on for sort of 20 years on technology stuff. And it's a good time to take a snapshot, because it's simultaneously a lot easier and a lot harder in terms of cloud and technologies that enable legal techs and enable us to be a bit more nimble with clients about pushing out solutions. But also from our point of view as a user of technology, we're in thrall to sort of 2 or 3 major suppliers on the corporate side in terms of businesses that offer solutions to law firms like ours. And there's been consolidation in that market, as you all well know. So that, from our point of view, is tightening up. So it's an interesting time. But yeah, to echo what you've said, it's great to have legal techs who we can work with to offer solutions to clients, and who we can be customers of to offer better solutions to clients. And Signable in the report's a great example of that. There's more to do in terms of how we work with our data, and how we structure our data and report on our data to clients. And that's something that we spend a lot of time worrying about, so to speak, or investing in. Echo the thought about innovation teams, and we have those, as do our friends over the road. and also echo the thoughts about ways of working and practices, because we see, as well as sort of business analytics and data science and stuff working into legal business generally, we also see our innovation teams working in agile ways and sort of with even DevOps maybe. So there's all sorts of methodologies and ways of working that LegalTechs bring to the party, and that our folk who have skills in that area bring to us as professionals on the front line. And that's a really interesting theme as well, I think.
Wow, you just proved the point, Alan. There's a lot more detail out there in this subject, and some of it in the report than just these highlights can do justice to. Also, really pleased you mentioned the data points, because one of the opportunities I think we have to quite quickly move into quite a tangible project is around legal data classification, how information can be and data can be more easily benchmarked and assembled for clients and law firms. So we'll be getting onto that fairly quickly. I'm gonna move to the next, the second of these points. It's closely related. Stuart's already billed it quite rightly as kind of one of the findings of the report. We started digging away at this. How many people are working in the region in roles that involve legal technology, innovation, and legal tech. And we kind of kept building the number as we went through interviews, and then we went back to a lot of the bigger players in the market to sort of ask for their more precise numbers. So we did an extra bit of research on this and found that we were up over 750. And the other interesting thing about this number is it's 750 and growing. A number of them said when we spoke to them, look, we've got this many now, but we've got 3 or 4 vacancies we're planning to fill in the next year. And that was kind of middle of the post-COVID pandemic period. So, people were reining a lot of things in, I think, in the industry and the economy generally, but looking to hire in some of these areas. Really interesting to find this. And we've drawn it reasonably broadly. We've looked at what many firms have got in terms of their IT functions, but we're absolutely in line with the way LawTech UK and others would define legal tech, law tech. Where have we got technology, legal specific technology talent, knowledge, innovation talent, people working on design thinking and legal project management. And it's related a little bit, this number, which is quite staggering in some ways, relates a little bit back, of course, to those head office functions. We've got some fantastic law firms with some very big international, national outfits where they're providing a lot of the support for legal tech applications, products, technology and innovation from our region. And that creates this incredible talent pool. So we were really thrilled by that. I think it led us to wonder whether we're even getting close to leveraging the potential of that group. That's an incredible base of knowledge, experience, talent, and we're not probably doing as much as we could. Are we really doing enough to describe what those jobs are and link into educational, academic institutions, right back into schools, and encourage more people to come forward? And as somebody's already mentioned on the chat, and we definitely got from our some of our interviews, whilst this is a great good news story, there were also quite a few people saying, I find it impossible to hire the people I want for my legal technology roles in this region. It's just saturated. They've got so many other options. I can't find the people I need. I'm having to go elsewhere. And that really worried us, actually, some of that thinking that we heard. So it's not an unalloyed good news story, but it's fascinating to think what we could do with these roles. And I wouldn't mind hearing from a couple of our panelists on this. I think particularly around the kind of range and diversity of roles, and the fact that we we keep adding more of these roles into firms. So Emma Sorrell at Burgess Salmon is at the heart of their innovation team. Emma, you've seen that team grow and develop. It'd just be good to hear your reflections on this point in particular.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chris, and afternoon, everyone. I'm the innovation manager at Burgess Salmon, and you're absolutely right, Chris, in that, you know, well, for starting, one of those numbers on the 750 or 769, whatever it was, on the other one, and you know, up to 3.5 years ago, I wouldn't have been one of those numbers because I was a mainstream corporate finance lawyer, and although we had a small multidisciplinary team, over the last 3-4 years, it's now built up into a reasonably significant team, and it has brought in new roles like the role I hold and others in the team. We're talking about sort of technology and innovation specialists, but also other business professionals. We sit our innovation team sits within a broader transformation projects team. So we've got project managers, legal project managers, change managers, business analysts. So we are now building those different skill sets. And I think that is becoming more and more important when you're looking at improving legal service delivery, becoming more digital, is you need those multidisciplinary teams, you need those different skills. And I also agree with the sentiment that's already sort of been reflected, which is then they've also got the challenge of that as how do we attract and retain that talent? How do we sell law as exciting enough for other professionals when they've got a choice of industries? Or how do we even make them aware that this is even an option? And then with our sort of lawyers and that lawyer pipeline, how do we sort of show to them there are other roles beyond just being a client-facing lawyer, but also help them with their skills, being more tech savvy, being perhaps more creative in their thinking about things like design thinking. And I think that's where we overlap with the academic side, the education side, like what connections can we make there to help build our pipeline of having that skilled workforce. And I think digital skills and access to tech and things like social mobility are also relevant here, and a digital divide, because if we want to, as we've already seen the comments about having enough people in that digital tech workforce, we need to also address that. So I think there are bigger issues beyond just what's in the legal sector, but they are still relevant to what we're talking about today.
Very good. Thanks, Emma. And actually, that's quite a nice, your final point there, which I think is so important. We are going to have to get out there and get involved and break down that digital divide if we want to bring people through into this sector. Probably leads me nicely on actually to Zoe King. Zoe's the campus director for Bristol and Exeter at the University of Law. So Zoe, you're in that education space. I'd just love to hear your thoughts on how this looks from the education point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I talk quite a lot to both law graduates and non-law graduates, quite a lot of STEM graduates and school leavers, and there's a lot of interest in going into this area. So I think the report is really useful for giving that level of detail. So rather than just talking in generalities that there are these opportunities out there, it just gives you a lot more information to sort of say the level of opportunities that there are and where to look for them. So really valuable from my point of view. And from a sort of legal education point of view, it comes at a really interesting time, because obviously we've got the review with SQE and how to qualify as a solicitor, which has meant that there's a lot of thought going into how do you get the skills that people need to go into working in law, and the answers come back a lot around all the things that people have been discussing already in terms of legal tech and legal project management and all of that sort of thing. So I think from our point of view, absolutely some of the themes that are coming through in terms of making it clear where the opportunities are, so that people that come in with that enthusiasm about it actually sort of have that clear pathway as to how to progress on. But also from our point of view, obviously we've got courses that we've developed where you can have a sort of legal tech masters, or you can have sort of awareness enhancing very short sort of day courses, or people who are in perhaps in a sort of technology role, but more legal knowledge, can have relatively short courses that particularly are being developed in reaction to SQE and other things. So it's just a really interesting time to sort of look at all the possibilities that there are for us to work more closely with other people in this sector, to sort of see what there already is and where there perhaps is a need for something different or new.
Excellent. I love the timing point. It does feel like it's coming at exactly the right moment, but still a lot for us to do, as I'm sure you might say when I ask you the final question of the session in a little while. Thank you for that. Thanks Emma and Zoe for that. I'm going to move to the third point now. So I won't say too much about this one. I think you've heard quite a lot from Stuart about what we found when we started to look for legal techs in the region, and we found more, and we kept adding more as we got cues from other people and introductions. And when we take the legal techs that are pretty purely focused on the legal sector, along with some fantastic tech companies in the region who do work for a broader spectrum of customers, but have a strong legal vertical. And in many cases, what they were telling us is we're getting more and more involved with legal, with law firms or with in-house legal or with different areas of the kind of legal tech ecosystem. And then we've also got these almost quite discrete units being created inside some of the large law firms as well. So we were working out there were kind of 30 or more of these organizations now, and not particularly connected up. We've been trying to do some of that, but very early days. So the report talks about them, sort of introduces them on the infographic, but we also come out with some recommendations about we need to improve the visibility of them. We need to connect them much more effectively to the consumers of legal technology. And we probably have got all this experience, 750 plus people in the region who could provide a lot of guidance, a lot of advice, potential kind of incubation, hackathon, accelerator kind of experience as well. So lots of ideas there. I'm going to just invite Richard Bertwhistle and Amdaris, very successful tech company in the region, doing a lot with law firms. Just to comment on that, Richard, what were your reflections on this finding? It had to happen at some point, but I can't see Richard on my list. Adam Bullion. Adam's at Practice Evolve, the Evolve group, who have recently acquired SOS, a well-established legal tech in Bath. Adam, can you comment on this?
I'm here. Yeah, so no, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. You talked about the 30 organisations. I think there's over 1,000 legal tech providers in the UK. So that creates its own little maze, I suppose, for law firms as much as anything else. But I was struck actually by something that Antonia said earlier, which was that clients are ushering in this new era of technology. And I think this is very, very true of law firms as well. Actually, I think it's actually about law firms ushering in this new era of technology, and wanting more, demanding more from technology. And that's probably what's led to some of this growth, or this explosion in growth here. And I think that's a good news story, but obviously it does create that sort of maze of navigating yourself around. And I think it's really important really for firms to be open-minded and consider the future of their firm in the long term as to what they need the software to do. And certainly Alan mentioned cloud, for example, as well. And I think it's that long-term progression into the cloud that law firms are going to look for in the long term.
Thanks, Adam. We will get Richard back on shortly. As he said, he's here. Stuart, was there anything else you wanted to add on this point? I think perhaps particularly the ways we can improve this going forward.
I think I'm going to be accused of relating it to fintech again, but I do think that's an interesting comparison, because although the detail of the ecosystem itself is quite different, when you go around, the various circles of fintech and legal tech in the UK, you'll hear a sort of rule of thumb that fintech is 10 times the size of legal tech. Clearly, it isn't in this region. And I having experienced the Khalifa report being released recently, where we obviously were very pleased that Bristol and Bath were highlighted as a key area for fintech in the UK and one of the top 10 clusters. I think there's the opportunity where we are with legal tech and how young the ecosystem is, and the opportunity has to grow to get ahead of the game. And should there be, I'm not saying there will be, but should there be an equivalent Khalifa report for legal tech, I think we've got every opportunity with the legal tech cluster that we've got at the moment, and the attitude of the firms we've got in the moment in the sector to be there as one of the big and established clusters should a Khalifa legal tech type report come out in the future. And I think that's, to me, the key point I would make about where we are as a sector at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think just to hold on that thought as well, Stuart, because I think we're going to come in a second just to the idea of how also legal tech and fintech can be working more closely together. Can you just flip the slide on, Stuart? I'll just take these last two points from the key findings. The fourth one is a bit more of I suppose a bit more focused on the how we could do better. So it's saying we've got a great sort of embryonic collaboration in the region around legal tech. Lots of people mentioned it when we were talking. We've got some really interesting groups that are involved, not just Bristol and Bath Legal Tech, but a great group called Bristol Legal Hackers, which has been quite active for the last 2 years. We're connecting up pretty well, but I think the general feeling was could do better. We've got to take that to the next level of getting tech companies and law firms much more engaged and involved together, getting collaboration within those groups as well, and this idea that we should connect up more cross-sector, and particularly there's a nexus perhaps with fintech and regtech. Dagmar Steffens from WECA, head of innovation and sectors at WECA, and my co-chair for Bristol and Bath Legal Tech. Dagmar, it'd be great to hear from you on this point around what more could be done, on the legal tech fintech side, but generally in collaboration.
Yeah, and I agree that reading the report, I feel very much that although I'm a co-founder of Bristol and Bath Legal Tech, due to many reasons, partly resourcing, of course, it is limited what we've done, and we see everything that could be done. With my hat from Becca on, I'm head of innovation and sector development, so that's an economic development function at a regional level across the region. We are interested in supporting sectors development, in particular with the focus on innovation and digital. And what we call that is interventions. That's how the public servant speaks. So we look for gaps, things that can't be resolved by the market itself, things that need a little shove maybe. And maybe this is such a situation because we've just had the Khalifa report. And when you look at the work streams in there, there are two particularly important to my neck of the woods. One of them is that we've been identified as a fintech cluster of 10 across the UK. So we are an emerging fintech cluster. And the recommendations from the report go very much in the direction of how to grow that cluster. So we are now waiting and nudging and listening to government as to what they make of those recommendations and how we can maximize this, this development of our emerging fintech cluster from a regional government point of view. So in the same breath, I then think about talent, and Neil just mentioned that all might not be well, because we've identified all these roles in the region, but at the same time it's really hard to recruit. And the Khalifa report makes recommendations around that as well, particularly around skills. We are already, as an authority, heavily involved in skills development, but the higher end skills and the specific skills for information age technologies like LegalTech, InsurTech, FinTech need to be maybe firmer on our radar. So again, it's something to look at what government does, and what I'm talking about really is there going to be some money coming into our direction on the back of the Khalifa report? And if there is, then WECA, together with the stakeholders, so with FinTech West, with Bristol and Bath, LegalTech, but also with all of you, needs to come together in order to be in the right position at the right time to catch that money coming our direction. And that is really what we need to do now. We need to watch what government does next, and we need to anticipate and collaborate and mobilize in order to be in the right place to catch what comes our way. And I'm heavily involved in that, and I'm really interested in speaking to everybody about that. But it will take that collective effort within the legal tech community, but across to the other information age technologies, including fintech, and work together, because many of our challenges in these years are shared issues.
Thank you, Dagmar. Yeah, absolutely. Be ready to do something tangible, and funding is going to be a really important part of that. I recognize we're up against time, so what I'm going to do, I will. I'm not going to say any more about the fifth of these points on societal purpose. I think it's really great to see it in there. Really good that the Whitecap team recognise there's something a bit different about the way we're doing things in the west of England generally, and in the legal sector, and that could really be a big driver and a big outcome from our legal tech activity. What I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Ben Holt, the president of Bristol Law Society, for a comment, which I know Ben will include an element on this point. But also, Ben, if you could kick off the final bit we asked our panel to do, and if everybody could do this very quickly and punchily, that would be fantastic. But I'm going to start with Ben, and I'm going to sort of call out others. We asked everybody in the panel to think about what we should do next. So one thing that they would like to see happen next in all of this, their kind of priority. Ben, if you could start with a bit of a reflection on purpose and this final point, and then one thing you'd like to see happen next, and then I will come to Martin Buckland and Richard Bertwhistle, who we haven't heard from yet, and then I'll go around the rest of the group. So Ben.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think one of the things that the project has driven home for me is the enthusiasm for a societal purpose, if you will, which, as I think has been discussed already, is based on a willingness to collaborate. I think most of our firms have our own innovation and tech projects going on, but it's pretty clear that everyone sees the benefit in this needing to be something that we can work together on, and we'll be stronger for that. And not just in the sense of getting more out of it as individual organisations, but I think also in a more altruistic manner. Lawyers really do care about issues like access to justice. We pretty much all have pro bono offerings. And there's a great opportunity, I think, for legal tech development to, for instance, improve the court system, which is hugely underfunded, and generally it's way behind what a lot of our own firms have. And that's going to be of great benefit to more vulnerable members of society, as well as helping lawyers and our clients with day-to-day interaction with the court. And I know from discussions with local judges that that's something that they would be very much welcomed. And another key theme is inclusion and diversity. I think this is an area that we all champion across the board, and an area where legal tech can help us all meet and hopefully exceed our targets. I mean, clearly there is an opportunity to make more money here, but there's also a real sense that legal tech can be used for the good. Obviously, I have more experience of lawyers on this, but I do get an understanding that this is something that tech firms are really keen to focus on as well. Obviously, this report came out of the work that Bristol Law Society and Dagmar at WECA and Chris have been doing over the past few years in establishing Bristol and Bath Legal Tech Group, and these themes have been present throughout the meetings. And Bristol as a region, I mean, it has a real sense of community. I think that's a large reason what's led me to being based here. It's a big region, but it's manageable in terms of knowing the key players and whether those organisations are big or small. And I think it's clear from the report and the numbers you're talking about before. But, we've got the talent and resources here to turn legal tech into a massive success story for the region. And I think that needs to be a driver for the future development of our offering. On the issue of the thing I would like to see happening next, there's been lots of talk and lots of meetings. The report's probably, to be fair, the first sort of tangible product we've had out of this ongoing project for the past few years. And I'd now like to see projects actually starting on solving real problems. I think some of my VWV colleagues are quoted in the report on making sure that lawyers and the techies are working together so that we're actually fixing problems that actually exist. So let's produce a tech-based solution. It's probably not going to be something that's like the crown jewels, because the firms will no doubt wanting to protect those, but it will ease us all comfortably into a proper collaboration. Maybe something that isn't purely profit-driven might be a good option. For instance, client inception or ED&I initiatives. But if we start by gathering a list of the problems, I'm sure that lawyers will excel at creating a list of problems. Checking that there isn't a solution already available, and then working with the innovators on a solution that can be delivered in a fairly short term.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And as you know, you and I touched on it recently. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for exactly that final point you've just raised, and I think we've got some people who are raring to go on that. So I think moving on that with a group to push that forward is going to be something that we'll do imminently. Talking about the kind of tech provider side of the fence, I'd like to bring in Martin Butterland. Martin's CEO at DataSharp Integrated Communications. Martin's one of our sponsors and one of those businesses in the region that have been doing more and more work in the legal sector recently. Martin, your reflections on what you've heard and your one thing as well, if you could.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. Because time's pressing, luckily I speak really quickly, so this is going to help everybody, hopefully. Yes, first of all, echoing some people earlier on, I think what Stuart and the team have achieved with this tech report is quite outstanding, actually. I don't know any other sector that's collaborated in that way to produce such a useful, insightful report, so well done. It's we're involved in many sectors, from trading companies, accountancy firms, fee-earning businesses, pro services, media, charities, not just law firms and chambers. And this is the best thing I've seen from an industry point of view locally, so well done. Adam said something earlier on which rang true with me, was that this is a minefield for law firms. There are well over 1,000, probably several thousand tech providers in the UK. There's something like 30,000 businesses that provide tech. So it's going to be more than 1,000. I expect that if you did a straw poll across the country, there'd be several thousand suppliers. So how on earth do the technical experts from the law firms, the IT managers and directors and CTOs, how they find a supplier, let alone a solution, is beyond me. And then amongst that, you've then got hundreds, if not perhaps low thousands, of products and services and applications. We come from at DataSharp Integrated Communications. We specialize in what we just said, integrated communications, so voice, data, video, mobile, security, all the business comm stuff. We don't do IT support and anything else or software. We're specialists for that, but certainly how you communicate. And we were getting big in the legal sector only the last couple of years. And when COVID hit in March, the interest in what we do within the legal sector has increased massively, more than we perhaps realized. And several reasons for that. One is, go back 10, 20 years, most law firms were 5 to 10 years behind commercial businesses in terms of their investments in technology. Up until COVID, I'd say they were 1 to 2 years behind the cut and thrust of commercial businesses. It really closed the gap quite significantly. But as a result of COVID, they've closed the gap to zero. They are up there now, law firms who had to change fast. Getting the partners around the table to spend their cash has been the slowest decision-making process of any business in the UK. And I think COVID has pushed them. The downside of that is we've learned a few lessons there. One is it's how technology is positioned and adopted is far more important then which or what technology. We're all sucked into Microsoft Teams and Zoom this and all the rest of it. And quite often we get on the bandwagon through being victims of marketing. But really, it doesn't matter so much what that brand is. They all do much of the muchness. They all get there in the end. The most important thing is that through that quagmire, through that maze of suppliers and technologies, if you factor 1,000 by 1,000, there's a million options there, isn't there? The combinations is we've been in business since '99. Before that, much smaller business. I've been in the comms industry 35 years, and you could get 10 quotes in as an IT professional and still not find the 10 top suppliers or 10 top products for you. But you do the right thing. You get them in, you have meetings with them, see if they fit your business, see if they fit your aspirations, see if the technical solutions work with your applications you've invested in. But there's no guarantee you've got there yet. So what we've focused on at our little place here at Daily Sharp is let's build a reputation within the sector so people can see us as a trusted partner. And I think you've got to get referrals and recommendations. You need people in your industry, in the legal sector, to give you referrals and recommendations to people they've worked with, good and bad. And that way, I think that'll be an easier minefield to tread. So we've focused a lot on our reputation and our relationships rather than the technology. It's hard not to talk about it. It's a techie industry, but another thing we found out of it, which is, I think Dagmar mentioned, and somebody else might have mentioned, forgive me if I got the name wrong, was that recruitment is an issue, a major problem. If you want to grow your business dynamically, like you say, you've already closed that gap with the cut and thrust commercial businesses. How do you attract the best staff? And it used to be you give them the best benefits, the nicest car, the fanciest phone, the laptop, the insurance policy, the pension fund. Now these professionals, the IT professionals, are saying, what technology have you invested in that they can get their teeth into? Are you a forward-thinking business that invests a lot of your profit and turnover into modern technology to make sure their job's easier, they can collaborate and communicate and interact with their colleagues and clients together? And where can they see their own career and their own career path blossoming the most? And in the past, I hate to say it, but you tend to get second rate, not necessarily out of 100 rates, if you like, they weren't quite the creme de la creme as attracted by law firms because they were slower moving and slower decision making and not enough investment. That's changed, like I just said, the last 11 months. And I think if a law firm now does not invest heavily in modern tech to automate and reduce transaction costs and get more fee earning hours per hour per fee owner, to have less support staff and less an overhead to support each legal fee owner, you need technology to do that. In the past, typing pool, lots of people on £1 an hour, cheap as chips. Now labour rates are so high and also premises are quite high. You need to be really effective. So you're saying that the rapid growth law firms now have got a higher fee owner to support staff ratio than those aren't progressing so fast. So what they've done, they haven't done it by sacking people, they've done it by employing the right technology in the right place at the right time. And so we've just, if you like, got sucked into this. Our inroads into law firms is accelerated the last year. We thought it would slow down. So I think Paul, our marketing manager who's on the call, said we're either selling, supporting, or working with closely 50 of the top 100 law firms in the UK. Some of them were much bigger than we ever wanted to deal with in the past, but now because we seem to help people through that maze and are very agile ourselves, being a small to medium-sized business, and the reputation's spreading. It's like viral, isn't it? We're having to change our business as well, and it's been a real interesting transition. The first problem with March last year with lockdown, we actually locked down our own office a week before Boris locked down the country. I thought, let's just look after my staff. And the first thing was a mad panic to help them transition. Yeah, sorry.
Martin, can you give me your one thing as well? Can you the kind of one thing? Because I think you've touched on it a couple of times already, but what do you think needs to happen next?
I think it's that investment in tech. It doesn't matter whether it's software or hardware. It doesn't matter whether it's cloud or hosted or on-premise. It doesn't matter whether it's hybrid. You've got to find the right technology. And I think law firms now are really investing heavily. And it's a minefield for you. I mean, there's no only thing I take away is that law firms have had to pull the finger out. The ones that have adapted the quickest the last 11 months, I think they're the ones that continue to survive and excel, and they'll attract the best staff. And the sad news is those that have battened down the hatches, I think they're struggling. They're losing clients and they're losing staff to the better firms. So it's become very competitive. That's what we've seen. People we've worked with who are real forward-thinking IT professionals, they've left and they've gone somewhere else. So why have you left? Well, they just don't do what I say they should do. And you can see. Can
I bring Richard Bertwhistle in on that point, because he's kind of sat. I think Richard, you're probably sat in a similar position to Martin, albeit in a different specialist area. It'd be interesting to get your take on what you've heard today, and your one thing that we should do next as well?
Yeah, apologies. I'm not quite sure what happened earlier there.
But I think we didn't have you set up properly. It's
there we go. No, never mind.
Good to see you back now.
No problem. Yeah. I'll be brief. What I want to see next is, as I would imagine, is very. I don't think I'll be alone in this. Is I really want to get a return back to the good old networking events and collaborate. I've heard collaboration a lot. A return to the legal tech and innovation fund networking events, be it Bristol and Bath legal tech meetups, Bristol Law Society get-togethers, crypto curry lunches. I mean, who doesn't love a bit of curry and a brew dog on a Friday afternoon talking about legal tech and whatnot? I think, speaking from my own personal experience, the majority of the panel, and I'd imagine the people listening to this, I simply know because of networking and collaboration and getting together and sharing ideas. And again, talking personally, the information and my understanding of the sector has simply come about from that. So I think that's what I'm really looking forward to, is getting back to that sort of post-COVID world where we can move forward again and get together. Amdaris want to be front and center of that in terms of the office space and collaborating with people. So my last thing would be, I really hope now that law firms really embrace digital transformation, wrap your arms around it. It's not going anywhere. It will make life a lot easier for everyone.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah, I like you and Martin clearly on the same song sheet there.
Richard,
that's really good to hear. I'm going to go quickly round the rest of our panel just for their one thing. So if I can, I'm going to kind of slightly reverse it back. So Zoe, what would you say?
Just looking forward to hearing more directly about the opportunities that are out there that I can transfer to our students so that they know what's there and where the skills gaps are. So, we're making sure that we're feeding that into the profession and people know where those opportunities are. So I think this, and the things that will follow from this will be really helpful in terms of that, and hopefully that will help with the recruitment problems that have been discussed earlier.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, and we're very keen to work with you on that. I think that's extremely important. Emma Sorrell, Burgess Salmon.
Yeah, without sounding like I'm just repeating, when I reflected on this, it was collaboration that leapt out at me. This report and things like BBLT show how when we find that synergy, we can collaborate really well. So it's how do we build on that, and trying to build on that, and not just necessarily collaborating within the sort of narrow world of legal and legal tech. It's broader than that, as we've already to other panelists have touched on. It's, we're sat in a great wider ecosystem. There's a lot going on in the region, so we should be able to connect to those other bits as well. And fintech's been mentioned. We've got to be creative sector, so I think it's even broader, and of course the academic sector as well.
Thank you, Emma. Much appreciated. Adam Bullion from Practice Evolve.
Yeah, hi everyone again. I'm going to refer back to something that Martin said actually, which is about building this reputation. And very much I think the reputation is built or is interlinked with reliability and responsibility. What I want to see happen is the legal tech providers out there, such as ourselves, such as Martin and so on, really taking responsibility to collaborate amongst ourselves and connect up the different types of technologies, so law firms maybe have an easier path to then navigate.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. I'd also just like to say it's great to see two really successful businesses working in our sector who are based in Bath on this call. So both Adam and Martin's business. So that's really important. This is about Bristol and Bath, not just one city. I'm going to move to Alan Pratt. Alan, your one thing.
I would like to see a more diverse workforce coming through as we encourage a greater range of entrants to the professional to client-facing roles within law firms, to put it more broadly. We're not as bad as people think we are on gender and ethnic diversity, but we're not very good socially, and this could be an opportunity to improve the breadth of our workforce in the wider sense.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. I endorse that 1,000%. That's really good to hear, Alan. Thank you for that. Dave Bloor from Foot and Steve.
Yeah, Chris, I think you know my one thing is going to be, I think we really need to put our money where this report shows it is. I think we need to really work together as a region. We need to crowdsource funds, efforts, resources to really accelerate and incubate ideas and bring them to life. In the legal tech solutions we are looking and probably looking to solve to deliver client services. Also, secondly, I think digital skills and the talent is absolutely key. We've launched a digital skills academy to upskill our entire employee base in this space. At the same time, very active in looking at working with universities and others about how we help support, what a lawyer of the future looks like and what a technologist of the future can look like as well. So those two areas I think are absolutely key to allowing it to evolve and grow.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. We've been very impressed by your legal digital skills academy approach. I think there's a lot of people to learn from that. Antonia James from BWV.
Well, I can't say collaboration because I think everybody else has said that. But honestly, truly, I think, looking at that ecosystem diagram, there's a huge amount of talent and knowledge and skill set out there, but together we'll be stronger. And I think to have a safe forum where we can share what we're thinking about, the problems we're trying to solve, where we might have a data set that a legal tech firm would make better use of than we can because we don't have the skill set that they have. So forging those sort of safe conversations where it's okay to solve problems together, even though sometimes we're competing in business. And for us, we have a network of smaller law firms. We're really keen to try and facilitate access to all of this for those firms as they face it and perhaps don't have the budget to have those innovation roles or access to the tech in the same way that we do.
Fantastic, and great, and again, brilliant final point, because the report makes the case quite a few times for we've got to help the smaller firms and the smaller groups of lawyers wherever they sit and the not-for-profit legal sector to get on board with all of this, and that we've got the ability and the resources to do that. I think fantastic from everybody. Stuart, can you just flip the final slide up? I know we're way over. We did discuss making this an hour and a half, this event. It isn't going to be an hour and a half, but it was clearly more than we could fit in an hour. Stuart, you were about to jump in there. Do you want to say anything before I just quickly tell people what happens from today?
I just muted because I was going to cough, but I will say my one-liner would be keep talking, keep pushing, and keep the momentum up.
Brilliant. Thank you. Very quickly, folks, before you go, really appreciate you hanging on. Those of you who are interested in what happens next, we've always said, sadly, for those of us who worked on this quite a lot, this is not the end of anything. This is just the start. Tomorrow is really the launch of this project. What we can do on the back of this report. So we want to get the report read by as many people as possible, downloaded. So please help with that through social media. It'll be available tomorrow. You will see it and get it and be able to download it. And please share it. If you want to do post shares from your organization, do. Anybody who's featured in the infographic, I would strongly encourage making it known that you're in there, you're part of the report, you're part of this ecosystem. And we really want to drive coverage. We've got a very extensive, we've worked quite hard on this distribution list. So both through WECA and Whitecap and stuff we're doing through BBLT. We've got a big distribution list for press, legal press, national, regional press, some international as well. And once we've done this first piece, we're going to follow up with some different angles. We're going to encourage journals and influencers to follow up with some more interviews, with blog pieces. We've got some ideas for articles, which will kind of take some of the themes you've all just been talking about and spin them out a bit more. So I'm coordinating that activity over the next 3 months to 6 months. So do get in touch if you've got any ideas on that. And we've got the idea that what we'll do is as we take forward some of the proposals that you've heard just now and featured in the report, we will be regularly kind of communicating out, this is new, Bristol and Bath LegalTech, we're now doing these things. We're going to work with Bristol Law Society, with WECA, with other organizations we're involved with to get some stakeholder roundtables moving quickly. And when I say April, May, some of them might even happen in March. where we take some of these specific initiatives and start to get them moving. I think the message is very much, we take this, we build on it, we do a great job to promote the region and this fantastic story we've got here. But we actually drive, as a number of people have said, Ben and Dagmar and others, for some tangible outcomes out of this. So final thanks to everybody who's been involved. Thanks to you for sticking with us. Sorry we ran over a bit. Hope it's been very useful, and hope you enjoy the report when you get your eyes on it tomorrow. So thanks everybody for joining us, and stay in touch. Give us your ideas. We've got the recording, which will be really useful, and we'll have a look through the questions and posts you put in there as well. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks everybody at Whitecap, and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Great job. Appreciate that.